Welcome to Busy Living Sober. Busy Living Sober. Busy Living Sober. With Cary McClain. What's going on, Cary?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm up here in Philadelphia. We had a Indian summer, they call it, and went down to the Jersey Shore for the weekend because it was about almost 80 on Saturday, sunny. It looked like the middle of summer, end of October. I mean, just a dream come true. And now we're back. The Phillies didn't make the World Series. The Eagles are 6-1. So we've got some good news. The Sixers are doing well. The Flyers are doing well. Everything's pretty good in Philly.
So everything's copacetic. Well, to everybody that's listening, the reason I invited Cary on the show is that he is also known as the DUI man. He is a litigator. He's been practicing for over 25 years, and he worked as a prosecutor at one time. And you also work for an insurance in the insurance world as well as an attorney. But now your focus is helping those that are, in trouble with the law. And I find it really funny because I started watching TikTok videos. Don't ask me why, but it sucked me in. And I was watching this weekend and I found they had these like police cams and they were following these young people. And one of them was some influencer and she was being pulled over for not her first offense, but her second offense.
Okay. So she's in deep trouble in Pennsylvania. If you get pulled over within 10 years, you're looking, and most people that get pulled over because that's sort of a problem. It's not their first time, it's their second time. They've got some medicine in their system that they don't know that they're not supposed to drive on. We can talk about that. In Pennsylvania, for instance, people on Adderall, they think that they're allowed to drive. Adderall is a Schedule II stimulant. You're not allowed to drive on Adderall. And there's a zero tolerance for medicine, even if you have a prescription. She's also looking at approximately 90 days in prison, depending on the county. Philadelphia is a little more liberal, but the bottom line is she's looking at conviction on a record for at least 10 years. She's looking at prison and lose her license for a year and a half.
So they're not joking around anymore.
Well, it's actually gotten more lenient in the 80s and then in the 90s. I was a prosecutor in the 90s in Montgomery County, which is the third largest county in Pennsylvania behind Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And it's a wide expanse of drunk drivers. We would all get major crimes, homicides, drug cases, but everyone out of the 30 assistant DAs would get 10 DUIs a week on top of as just your bread and butter. And so we saw a lot of drinking. And then there was no home monitor unless you had a very serious condition, medical condition, or you were like really old. So things have gotten a little more lenient, but in that same token, it's gotten more like rehabilitation. It used to be in the 90s, lock them up, go to prison, get out, stay out of trouble. Now it's a little bit more like, okay, we'll let you do home monitor, but if you have a certain, you have to be tested to see if you need special classes to take and things like that. So it's slightly more rehabilitative.
Isn't Montgomery County one of the places where drug court was born? Wasn't that the case?
Well, I know that Judge O'Neill, Stephen T. O'Neill, who's a very good friend of mine, who was the Cosby judge, he handled the Cosby case in Montgomery County. He's the head of drug court, and it's very intensive. It's very tough to complete. I mean, these people are in there. I think they're in there initially every day, then it's once a week. And we're talking about years and years of what I call babysitting, for lack of a better term. But it works for those people that are committed to it, and it's changed a lot of lives. He's got in his courtroom all over the walls, letters and pictures and drawings from all the people that he's helped save.
I mean, I love that. I didn't even know this, but in New Jersey now, they also have drug court which they recommend listening to Busy Living Sober, which I think is kind of cool. Isn't that awesome? While they're going, isn't that cool? Because do you believe the reality is that so many people think that they can get behind the wheel after having one drink or two drinks and maybe having, and they don't even think about the fact that they're on Adderall or Wellbutrin or whatever, say, drugs that they're on, and they're getting behind the wheel. That's not pretty kosher, is it?
Well, it's a problem because, you know, like people pop a Xanax and then, you know, they have one or two drinks and they don't realize, hey, maybe I do that at home late at night. It helps me get to sleep. First of all, it's very dangerous. You can die from that mixture. But they have this false sense of confidence that they're going to be able to go out. Now, I find even more, it's not always the pills, but the couple things. First of all, alcohol. Look, the way that people think about it is, oh, I'm just going to go out and have one or two. I'm going to go out to dinner. I'm going to be with my friends. Next thing you know, they're there for 4 hours and they can't drive. And they're like, oh, what do I do? Do I leave my car? It's going to get towed, blah, blah, blah. The first thing I say to people is, listen, whether you're going to get sober or not, you need to be safe. You need to look out for other people that are innocent. Look, anyone listening to this, including me, you know, you can preach to the choir. We've all, I think everyone that's listened to here has probably made that mistake at least once in their life, and they drove when they shouldn't have. So I always say Uber in, Uber out. I've jumped out of a helicopter and said chopper in, chopper out. I've been on a private jet, jet in, jet out. Look, just to say, hey, I'm the DUImaster.com, DUImaster.com. If you go and you're going to drink and you're going out for the night, just assume, look, spend the $15 to Uber in and $15 to Uber back out, because you're going to drink more than you thought you were. And if you didn't, then at least, you know, you got your own private chauffeur, which people didn't have back in the day. It's a nice treat and it's a good way. Look, you work hard, and even if you want to play hard, I know this is about sober, but, you know, be smart about the decisions that you make and just Uber in, Uber out.
You know, what's so funny, you bring it back, like you just mentioned back in the old days. You know, I graduated from high school in 1987. So I'm a year younger than you. And I mean, back in the day, I got caught by the police. I was drinking and driving. You know, there were no, I mean, they did have cabs. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where we could call the Ladue cab, like the St. Louis cab company, and they'd come and pick us up. But who did that? No one, right? And today, there's so many options for people. I mean, obviously, if you live in rural Pennsylvania, which I know you have to go to right after we get off this call, which, by the way, thank you so much for your time. I mean, you have to go out there and deal with something that happened tragically that probably could have been averted.
Well, I mean, look, I have clients every week, new clients. I work on cases every week that are old clients that have been working on their case. There's a formula, there's a way to succeed, there's a way to help them out and to make them a completely satisfied customer. Bottom line is, like, for instance, I have a client now who got in a head-on collision. And he was 0.25 or greater, which is, you know, 3 times the legal limit. You're completely trashed and you should never have been driving. And, you know, thank goodness it looks like the other person got out of the car, was standing there and didn't leave in an ambulance. So this person may be able to get the first time offender program, which means what? No prison, no conviction. It can get expunged, meaning, and the suspension's only 2 months. Now, it seems like too much of a slap on the wrist. Well, that's why they have prosecutors that generally each of the counties will have a prosecutor. Philadelphia has one, Bucks County, Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, just the 5 counties around Philly have a special prosecutor in their office, usually called the chief of the ARD unit, which is accelerated rehabilitative disposition. And ARD cuts them this first time offender slack, and it is sort of a slap on the wrist. However, you do have to get evaluated, and this case will be flagged by the chief, and he's going to say, no dice. If this person doesn't get into therapy, doesn't do inpatient, doesn't go to some classes, I'm not going to give it to them because they're absolute danger. You can't get that messed up and get into a head-on collision, period.
I mean, I don't know when our thinking thought that it was okay to be impaired and drive. I mean, how many people in prison today, and I don't know if you know the exact number, you can give us a round, like maybe guess, whatever percentage, are due to either alcohol or drug use?
Let's put it this way. With my experience as a prosecutor and on criminal defense now, and I'm coming off, excuse me, I'm coming up on my 30th year. I became a lawyer and passed the bar in November. A couple more days, I'll be at it for 30 years. I'm going to say 90 to 95% are always. Now, look, it doesn't mean the person's always on some medicine, abusing a medicine, a drug, or alcohol, but it's in their life and they're making bad decisions. And they look like, I hate to say it, stupid. And I say to my staff, I go, can you believe this moron? And they go, I can't. And I go, well, you should. There's a reason they're now a criminal. It's because they make stupid decisions. And really, it's just, it doesn't have to really do with intellect. It's more common sense is what I think it comes down to. And back in the day, look, I remember, I played football, wrestling, lacrosse at Conestoga High School. I was a year before you, 1986. We got pulled over. I was in the back of a pickup truck and we got pulled over by the sergeant, the local sergeant, not to be named, great guy. And he said, listen, follow me. Only after we had jumped out and stood there. And I said, guys, start eating grass so you can't smell the booze on our breath or the beer. And it was just something that was lackadaisical back in the day. Thank God now there's safeguards. My daughter was hit by a drunk driver. I have a lawsuit right now against the defendant that jumped out and ran. And this was in 2013. So she's only now 19 or 20, and you can wait to sue until you're 18. So that's why the case has been able to be continued so long. But I wasn't sure the long-term effects in the case with regard to concussion, with regard to, she was a swimmer. Ultimately, years later, she needed therapy from swimming. Well, swimming's supposed to be good for you. So look, I have plenty of war stories. It can get personal. I think we all have personal stories of how we may have hurt someone with abuse, or we've got a family member that was hurt or has a problem. And you feel horrible for the people through the years where they have a child that is addicted to, say, heroin. We've got people here in Lower Merion that are people that go to country clubs, people that played varsity sports at Ivy League schools that get addicted and they die of a heroin overdose. And we've got that pandemic as well across America. Chandler from the show,
Matthew
Friends,
Perry.
Matthew Perry just died in his bathtub. And now I didn't read into it enough. I don't think they've published it yet enough, but Matthew Perry from Friends apparently died in a bathtub. And, was he drunk? Did he commit suicide? Was it a combination of drugs and pills, which is what he admitted that he generally abused? And it's just a shame because parents are out there and, these kids steal from them. They need money. And when your kid is stealing from you and not listening to you, you want to give up on them. And ultimately, a lot of times that's what happens is parents just have to give up because it's draining them. It's killing their life. And everyone in the family starts to die.
It's really crazy. All I keep thinking about is when we were growing up, Nancy Reagan, was doing the big thing against don't drink and drive, her whole campaign. I feel like there hasn't been somebody out there since her that had such a big voice. So when somebody comes to you and is in this state, now I don't care if they're getting divorced, if they just got a DUI, that alcohol and drugs are involved. Because I heard you say earlier, you said something to the effect that the judge is going to say, you need to go do this, 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 and this. When they first come to see you, is that your suggestion? Go into treatment, go to meetings. What is your first suggestion to somebody who has just been arrested?
Well, most of the cases, they'll say, will it help? And I say, look, you don't have to do it. It's not required. You don't have to do anything. You only have to do the minimum requirements that the government makes you do. But will it help? Sure. We always look for mitigation, MIT, mitigation, in a case. whether it's a homicide case or a DUI case. I tell people, you want the A game? Here's the A game. Go to inpatient for 28 days and don't ever drink again. That's going to help me. Very basic. But I have kids. I'll handle, excuse me, pardon me. I'll have kids. It's Monday morning. I'm getting the sort of the weekend here out of me from being at the beach. But and that ocean water is great for you. But I have multiple kids I just picked up because they're back to school in the fall, and it always happens. And they're popped for walking with a beer or drinking underage. And I tell them, here's what you need to do. You're going to do community service, go to a local library, go to the hospital, go to a police station to wash cars, or go to a firehouse. I like firehouse. Gladwin VFW is here on the beautiful, right on the Schuylkill River. We have people work there. That had been flooded. We had to raise money to reopen it. And do 12 to 20 hours of community service. 2, get me a resume together, and your resume better say, I've been studying, I'm in college, I'm in a sorority or fraternity that is actually doing something good for the community. We did a soup drive or something like that. I had an internship, so a good resume. The third thing I asked them to do is to take a drug and alcohol awareness course online. They're generally 4 hours. It's $25, and then they can print a certificate of completion. And, I've got at least 2 young ladies now who are scared to death because they were walking around with a beer. And I tell them in front of the parents, and a lot of the parents will thank me, look, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Do you want to throw your life away? I mean, I don't tell them, is one underage going to really ruin your life? Well, it could, because it could be a slippery slope. The bottom line is, you want to have a clean record. You want to get that internship. You want to get that job. You don't need Villanova or one of the local colleges dragging you through the mud, which is what happens. They also confer with the police. You have to meet with the administration. It's a nightmare for a lot of these kids, and it's a good deterrent for making bad decisions about underage drinking.
Well, and I think it's different again now, bringing it forward to today. Parents that are listening right now, you don't normally send your kids off to college, and I've experienced something that you just mentioned, and I didn't say to my child that was leaving to go to college, hey, by the way, you can't walk down the street with a Solo cup. Now, parents don't think about these things when they send their kids off, because they think, all right, you have your bedding, your bedroom looks so beautiful, you've got all your good stuff, but they don't think about these basic structures that you don't think about when your kid leaves, right? You've got your backpack, you've got your books, but what life skills do they need to know when they're walking out that door and they're walking onto a college campus and their mommy and daddy aren't there anymore? So what do you say?
Well, one of the crazy things, if you Google it and look into it, and I don't know to adhere to it or not, I'm sure that everyone listening is going to go, that's the worst thing you can do. And it's just a topic of conversation. Do you let your child drink a beer at dinner and learn how to socially drink? Or do you go with, look, we don't drink. You don't drink. There's nothing good that comes from drinking. I don't know. I mean, what's the best thing to do? But a lot of kids are going to obviously go to college and see it and experience it. And do you want to be the kid that's throwing up in the bathroom, that falls off a building, that is doing shots? Or do you want to be the kid that goes, hey, I've been having a beer once a week with dinner for an Eagles game or something. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I don't know. But that's one of the things they're doing. Because if you go to where I went, I played rugby at Penn State. You want to go to Penn State and avoid drinking, well, good luck. And you can do it. But you might find yourself drinking a beer. Do you want to drink 12 beers? No. Alabama, Miami, these big football schools, it's all around football and drinking.
It's so interesting because I did have a guest on a couple weeks ago, and he was a graduate of the Haverford School, and he was a football player, and he got hurt and got addicted to painkillers and ended up, now he's sober. He's at Penn State, living the sober life at Penn State. But it's interesting that you brought up drinking with your family, because if you think about it, in Europe, so if you grow up in London or you grow up in France or Italy, you've been drinking forever. There's none of this kind of perceive like you have to be 21 and that's going to make you okay at handling drugs and alcohol, which is that a magic? I don't know who came up with that magic number. God bless them. But what does that really mean anything when it comes down to the law?
There's so many weird decisions that are made, and really comes down to politics because for a while, for instance, medical marijuana. So medical marijuana in Pennsylvania is legal because it's medical marijuana. Now you have to interview with a doctor. The doctor you need to fill out a 10-page form, and you have to fit one of 20 or 30 diagnoses. You know, sometimes it's PTSD, sometimes it's chronic pain. It can be a bunch of different things. And then you get interviewed, usually on a Zoom, and you pay your couple $100. It's fairly cheap, and you register with the Pennsylvania with the government online, and you get a medical marijuana card 4 days later, and you go to a dispensary. There's got to be 6 of them to 10 of them right in Lower Merion, right nearby. Now, the question is, it took a while to get there. And is it legitimate? Is it better? Are people abusing it? Are people using medical marijuana when they really don't need to get to sleep, when they really don't have chronic pain, when they didn't have PTSD? Well, is it still better for that? Let's just say that's 50% of the people are just using that medical marijuana to party. Is it better, though, for the general public to have that handed to them by the government? They pay for it. It's taxed. And then thereafter, and this is a question I'm posing. I'm not saying either way, whether it's right or wrong. Is it better than them going out on the street corner and getting it from a drug dealer? Is it better for them to know where it's coming from, as opposed to, here, take these gummy bears and find out if there's fentanyl in them? They're not going to have fentanyl in the government marijuana.
It's so interesting because, again, I've been sober for so long, and I never really liked smoking weed. That just was never my thing. In fact, I hated it because I'd eat so much. But if they find it in your car, if you get pulled over and you have marijuana in your car or the gummies, and the police find it and they know that they're not actually the gummies that come from whatever that company is that makes gummy bears, there's probably a lot. If you get busted with that, what happens? Are you in trouble?
Yes. I mean, first, let me go back though. What was your food of choice for when you were
Doritos.
When you had the Munchies Doritos?
Doritos, and then your fingers would be bright orange. And they didn't have, when we were growing up, they didn't have all these flavors that they have today. It was like one flavor and that was it. And you'd eat the whole bag. What
Well,
about you?
I was gonna say they have the spicy ones now. I try not to eat that stuff. If I do, it could be anything, you know. I just
No, in 1986.
Oh, at 86, I don't, probably the same thing as you, the basic Dorito, if I could find them around somebody's house at 2 a.m. So there's there's law now. The police pulled over someone, I think it was out in Lehigh County, one of the suburbs of Philly. And they said, hey, we smell marijuana. And they saw marijuana there, and they took the kid and arrested him, but he had a medical marijuana card. And the judge said that when he showed the medical marijuana card to them, they had to stop there and they couldn't continue the search. So I do tell people, look, even if you're you know, I do some criminal defense. I also do injury cases. I've gotten I think I got $1.6 million for a state trooper that was rear-ended by a drunk driver in a construction site in Montgomery County, which is a fairly high verdict. I represent a lot of people in car accidents that are hit by DUI drivers. So, you know, I tell people, if you're going to smoke marijuana, wouldn't the smartest thing to be able to do so legally? And if you're not under the influence and you happen to be traveling with marijuana, let's say you're going to go down to Rock Hall to go sailing, and you want to bring marijuana with you, why bring the stuff that you got off the street where you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get arrested. You're going to leave your car in handcuffs and go to prison. And then you'll probably be let out the next day. But just for possession, have the card, be smart, be educated. Don't get high and drive. And the other weird part about this is kids, a lot of parents don't understand. They see their kids on a Friday night. They're like, kids aren't they're not drinking. These kids think, a lot of these high school kids believe it's okay. As long as I'm not drinking and driving, I'm just smoking pot and driving. And so a lot of parents need to understand, you're not just looking in the backpack for the water bottle that has, filled with vodka, the old move from high school. Look in their eyes, talk to them. You need to try and identify if they're smoking weed.
Well, it's so interesting because I feel like our generation, especially in the world today, and maybe it's been like this forever, but being selfish, like really, it's all about like, don't you think and I'm like, and the only reason I'm saying this is because I was one of these people. I thought it's no big deal if I've had a couple glasses of wine to get behind my Suburban and drive down the street and think that that's okay. Thank God nothing ever happened. I swear God watches over drunks and children, including me when I was but I was so selfish because I didn't think about it. It was like shooting a gun into the sky and praying that I wasn't going to hit somebody with a bullet. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe that it's not just, well, it's selfish, but it comes with being young and immature, and that is readily available. They had the quote unquote war on drugs with Reagan. There was the cocaine epidemic, and then there was the next epidemic, and now we've got the heroin epidemic. And I think that the schools are doing a lot of things wrong. Personally, every year, why not during the entire year are you not going to a class 2 times a week from kindergarten through high school, and it's called drug and alcohol education? Why? It doesn't make sense. Why aren't they helping you? So for an example, why aren't they teaching you how to, and you always hear this, how to work a checkbook? Why aren't they teaching you, which is huge all over social media? You brought up social media, how to be your own boss, how to become an influencer, how to get yourself on YouTube, how to videotape yourself and market yourself, how to make a website. Why are these things being the things that are being taught? We're learning how to read, write, and add and divide, but then you have to take calculus, and you have to be able to look at all these numbers all the way down. How about the common sense of teaching us the things we do every day that we need to do, including how do you drive? I mean, come on. I'm in Philly all the time. Get out of the fast lane. If you're going to go slow, move into the right lane. You shouldn't just take a test at 16. I think that they should keep kids in driving school to teach people how to drive. So it's the basic things that our kids aren't being taught. And one of those basic things obviously should be, look, you're young, you're being selfish, look yourself in the mirror. And if they get that over and over, what you're talking about, Elizabeth, I think that they have a chance of succeeding.
Well, and I think it's so interesting. And I just wrote down, and this might get a little political. And by the way, everybody who's listening knows that this is my opinion only and Cary's opinion only. So if you want to send us something that you don't like it, that's okay. You cannot agree. That's okay. But I find that the fact that the police today, kids don't look at the police, and you're up in Philadelphia. I left there. Okay. I came to Florida because I like it better here. It's a little easier for me here. And I'm going to give an example of something I saw. I was on Twitter, or X now that it's called, and they had a courtroom showing of these 2 gentlemen that were sitting in the back of a courtroom. They were 2 young men, and they had killed an off-duty police officer. Okay. And they have a photo of the 2 of them sitting there waiting for the judge to come. And they're sitting there's a couple chairs in between them. I think they both are cuffed and everything. And they're laughing and joking and thinking that that's okay. They have just killed Not only was it a police officer, not only was he retired, but he was probably somebody's dad, somebody's grandfather, somebody's husband, someone's loved one. And they're just sitting there laughing and thinking that that's okay. What is going on in our society today, Cary, that has these people thinking that it's okay to do all this stuff, to go knock things down in Philadelphia, catch things on fire in Philadelphia when they win a game? Where is the respect?
Well, back in the day when I was a prosecutor, everyone, it's very professional. I mean, you're the best of the best. I was on the narcotics enforcement team. We had guys in vans that were surreptitiously videotaping people. I used to send a kid around on a bike with a backpack with a video that was hidden, and he would go to the street corners and get cocaine off of drug dealers. We're talking the top of the profession everywhere. I hate to go there, but football, it's the best. These guys fly around like crazy. They're making one-arm catches because they're the best. It's complete and utter professionalism. Then you see nowadays, what's the shift? It's a shift to the people that didn't ever have those jobs because they weren't good enough. They weren't tough enough. They weren't professional enough. They didn't think the same. Those people are now in charge. Those people are now the prosecutors. So take Philadelphia. There's a prosecutor down there who's now just starting maybe to turn toward, hey, guns are bad. Let's really, hit the gun problem. This guy was giving away free tickets. Hey, your victim's son is in a wheelchair because he got shot by somebody. We're going to give the guy probation. What? And so, and that's why you will find many times as you get further out into the counties, as you go further south into Florida, that you get people that say, hey, look, I'm not saying that I love law enforcement. I don't like getting pulled over for speeding. I don't want to be that defendant. But these are the people that protect us. Hopefully, if somebody were to try and get into my home at night, I can call 911 and there's a cop that's going to come in, pull out a gun, wearing a vest, and he might get shot and killed. And meantime, I'm jumping out a window and running because I'm scared. These are people that, generally speaking, 99% of the time, should be looked at with respect, and they're not. We just had one officer killed in Philadelphia at the airport. His other partner survived, and they actually, the Phillies game was packed with 40,000 people. And before the game, what did we do? The people that are like-minded, the people that are into being great, and I know it's sports related, but the people that are on the same team together, what are they doing? They honored him, and everyone gave him a standing ovation, and that's the way it should be. But I mean, I can't believe you see stuff on social media. I saw a clip of one of the planes going into the towers, and I read some of the comments, and it's like, that's not a real plane, that's AI, that never happened. Those people, this segment of society, which seems to be half of society, don't seem to be in the same reality where we respect law enforcement. And believe me, when it comes to pulling people over for DUI, it's saving thousands and thousands of lives. I don't have it up here, but we used to have tens of thousands of people that got killed in car accidents. It's way down. There still are, unfortunately, people getting killed from DUI drunk drivers.
It is, it's the prisons are filled. I'm going to admit this. I got pulled over in Delray Beach, and I didn't know that it was a 25-mile zone. And luckily, the police officer was really nice. He was actually from New York, because all the cops here are from the Northeast, because they all had to get out of the Northeast and come to Florida. Because DeSantis is like treating them like kings and queens, like they should be, because they are our civil servants. They put themselves in harm's way for us all the time. And for some reason, there's that disconnect that they're there to help us, not to hurt us. I don't know when that changed in society, that they thought police were bad. Like when that started to change is insane. And he said to me that the prisons are so filled and the DA's offices are so backed up with these cases of all these criminals, they don't know what to do. Is that true?
It is, it depends on it depends where you are. You know, it's all about location. Montgomery County out here, for example, outside Philly, COVID hit, and suddenly, you know, the government was like, look, we don't need all these people in prison. There's a lot of people here that are nonviolent. And I was okay with that part of it. But the opposite happened in Philly. They lowered their bail standards down. It used to be if you had a prior robbery and you just committed a crime with a gun, you didn't get bail. These people are getting bail and they're going right back out on the street. And that's a segue to, you know, we had this guy in Chester County. Did anybody read the newspaper? No, nobody reads the newspaper, but on whatever comes up on your cell phone, I use an iPhone. Whatever you read for news, you heard about Chester County. Well, what happened in Chester County? I'm in Chester County all the time for DUIs and other cases. He did the crab walk. He had killed his girlfriend or wife, I forget which, God bless her. The victim was stabbed, I think, 26 times, murdered here in Pennsylvania. And for whatever reason, they were transferring him. He was in Chester County. He did the crab walk backwards up with one leg on the fence, two legs on the fence, two hands on the wall. And they called it a crab walk. He crab walked up, jumped out, and ran around for a couple of weeks while everyone was trying to find him. He was from Brazil, I believe, and he had already murdered someone. How did he get into the US? What is he doing here, killing more people? Who's letting that happen? Didn't we used to have a war on bringing people in at the border? That's all changed. And the more you look at it, it's like, let's let violent criminals out on the street. Let's not take down violent criminals. And this is what we're seeing. And let's let criminals in that are illegal aliens. And then let's ship them to your town. New York's sitting there going, slapping themselves in the forehead going, wait a minute, this was a mistake. Yeah, you don't need to be a brain surgeon. 1 + 1 = 2. And so, again, that goes back to some of the decisions our government's making across America.
And now I want to jump into one thing, and it has nothing to do with drinking or drugs right now. It has to do with what is going on in the world. We live in a really scary world. There's a lot of darkness. We all know that. We all just saw what happened in Israel. In that country, you are not allowed to own a firearm. Okay. Here in the state of Florida, you don't even need a concealed carry, even though I have one. Okay. So I have a right to bear arms. Am I going to go out and kill anybody? No. But if something were to happen, you want to be prepared. You want to be able to protect your family. And I've watched so many people discuss this, and that in the United States, it's not the gun that's killing all these people, like that just happened, the horrible tragedy that just happened in Maine. Terrible, terrible, terrible. It wasn't the gun. It was the person using the gun. What's your opinion on this?
I mean, I get that. I understand that. I'm scared of guns. Everyone should be. I agree that it's your right via the U.S. Constitution to own a gun, to have a gun, to carry a weapon. I have one. I wore one when I was a prosecutor. I have a snub nose SP 101 Ruger 5-shot revolver. I think it's like a Saturday night special or something like that. And it's for close range. Somebody, you're at the ATM, and which I don't use ATMs, and someone tries to take your money, which, by the way, don't even try and go to an ATM in Philadelphia, because you could be taking your life into your hands. I wouldn't go into a convenience store in Philadelphia. You're taking your life in your own hands. I wouldn't go out. We don't even go to Philadelphia anymore. We don't go down there. I used to be a member at a private club down there and play squash. We don't even go down. It's not worth it. There's too much safety and too much to do in the suburbs now. But with regard to guns, I believe that the manufacturers, similar to cigarettes, just make too much money. They lobby too much. It's a product that they're allowed to legally sell. And if you look, just Google how many guns are sold in Florida a year. I think there's like, it's like 500,000 guns are exchanged and sold in Pennsylvania per year. So the issue is these guns are all over the street, and some people own 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 guns. Fine, not a problem. The issue is there's so many out there that these kids get a hold of them, and they make bad decisions with them, and they rob people. I'm involved with a robbery in Philadelphia right now where 3 or 4 kids hold up another kid and take his backpack. In his backpack was an iPhone and a bottle of water, and they put a gun to his head and took it. The cops then went in and grabbed his and did find my iPhone. They find the car because they're riding in the car with the iPhone, and it turns out to be a stolen car. I mean, look, it's lawlessness. But going back to the gun issue, there are too many guns out there. Now, there's nothing we could do about it. I'm just stating a fact. There's too many guns. There's enough guns for, I think, everyone in America to have, a couple. So it's prevalent. It's there. You can get it. Okay. It's part of the problem because these guys can get it. But yes, then they make bad decisions with it. What do? Well, you have to police. In Philadelphia, they've tried the old, hey, come here. And you pat people down. You see someone on the street, you pat them down, but then that's discriminatory. But it cut down on all the homicides and murders. And to a degree now, because it's a circuitous craziness. Let me give it to you. Because it's so dangerous to be a cop, nobody wants to be a cop. Because people don't like cops, nobody wants to be a cop. So the cops that are there are like, hey, I'm just trying to get paid. And look, it's commonsensical. And I'm not saying that they're not brave down there in Philly. Believe me, I've been on ride-alongs. Try a ride-along in Philly, and this was 25 years ago. It is Gotham City down there. And these guys are lucky they're making it home alive. Are you going to jump out of your car and frisk somebody all night long? You're going to get shot. So what happens is it becomes a society where they say, hey, these streets, and I think they did this in The Wire, the show The Wire, which is very popular. And I work narcotics. It's very accurate as to what happens if anybody wants to check it out. And whether they say it out loud or not, they just go, look, whatever happens in this section of Philadelphia, and we're talking massive amounts of streets, when you get the call, you respond to the dead body, and we try and figure out who killed who. And that's it, because it's too dangerous.
You've been so awesome. And I have one more question. Okay. So
let me just grab a little bit of my Wawa coffee here.
Have some more Wawa coffee. I'm so grateful because Wawa is in South Florida.
It is now?
It is. It's right down the street. I can go right down on Woolbright Boulevard here in Boynton Beach, Florida. There is a Wawa. But
let's go.
Let's go. Love Wawa. So what I wanted to bring up is that alcoholism and drug addiction, mental health, they're all under the same umbrella. If we're looking at an insurance company, you know this as well because you worked in insurance. Mental health is an attributor to a lot of these killings. We know that, right? Most of the people that are out there doing these mass horrible, horrible things and killing other people are mentally ill. Yes. The people getting behind the wheel of these cars are drug addicts, alcoholics, not thinking about it, right? It all goes under the mental health thing. Yes. What, if, in your opinion, your humble opinion, what do you think can be done that isn't being done? And obviously, we're coming up to a political year that we're going to go vote for presidents, and we need somebody to come out there and talk about it. I know that there's one person who talks about it all the time, and he mentions the fentanyl abuse. But what is your opinion, being on the other side of being there to represent these people that have committed these crimes?
Look, I always say to the police, I say, listen, they're like, hey, we just arrested one of your guys. And I go, what, are you going to threaten me with another fee? Okay, great. Go out and get to work. You just pop someone on a DUI. A, you're making the streets safer. B, I'm making money. And generally, I don't want to upset people out there. Look, I'm making money trying to get people the best deal they can. I'm not always going in there and getting a not guilty for a murderer. I'm not always going in there getting a not guilty for a DUI person that doesn't deserve it. Most people, I'm helping them through the system so that they can successfully get their car back at some point and drive. They can hopefully move on with their life without a record if they did it right. We want people working. Really, it comes down to, I think we've touched on it, education and law enforcement. That's an issue in Philadelphia. The education isn't there, and how do you fix that? I don't know. I'm not an educator, but it's a very tough job to even get these kids to sit down and learn, let alone learn, because they're learning, and it's not just Philly, it happens in the suburbs. They're learning a bad example from their parents, and they also are learning a bad example from single family mothers without a father as a role model, or vice versa. And I think that has a lot to do with the pandemic, but of mental health. I think one of the other issues is, I don't know, back in the day, it seemed like life was a little simpler, didn't it?
It did.
And although you wound up, as well, having an issue or a problem, and that you address every day of your life, and you're a parent, and you need to think of yourself first. You can't do it for your kids. You've got to do it for yourself. And so it's this self-awareness of, who am I? Am I abusing? This struggle, how do I succeed? And I think that in this such a fast moving society, I think right now with social media, and I'm on it all the time. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. These young kids are caught in a reality that's not real. They're in their phones all the time. They're not outside sitting there looking at flowers, looking at the sky. They're not playing sports, which I think is important. They're not learning that, life is about take it in, breathe it in, see the sun, have a job, be productive. If you want to party, do so in moderation, and do so with some awareness. And it seems like, with all the stresses and how fast moving the world has become, people are taking and self-medicating. And I absolutely believe it's due to stress from life. And I don't know that, I think those stresses were still there in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and they're always going to be there. So I think, Elizabeth, the question is going to be, how do people respond to the problems in their life and realize the following? I talk to people about this all the time. This is a problem in your life that you're going to deal with. You have anger in your life, and you know what? You're going to be angry. You're going to have sadness, and that's part of life. It's not just being happy and jumping around and having fun and partying all the time. Part of life is suffering and sickness and relationships that go bad, and children that get hurt or don't listen, and parents that do the same thing. And so it's, how do you respond to problems that are never going to go away, that are part of being human? And it's going to be like that for your entire life. How do you respond to the problems? And you probably shouldn't do so with self-medication.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Come on again, I hope, in the future. And it's
My
really
pleasure.
interesting. I'm just going to give two little sentences that I think are important. I'm reading this book from the Dalai Lama. It was a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, and it's called Joy. And he mentions in there what you just said. We all have stuff that we go through. No one goes through this thing unscathed. It's what you do with it. And the other thing you mentioned is education. That's what this is about. That's what this podcast is about. We're here to help educate you. Cary just gave you so many ideas of what you can do with your kids, what you can do with yourself. Just something else to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I thought about this summer, a couple of things that I do in my life that people can help them. And I think it's, as I say, the world's moving so fast. Take 10 minutes and go for a walk. I'm a certified yoga instructor. I'm youryogalawyer.com, I believe. Go take an hour and do yoga once a day or once a week. Smell the roses, for lack of a better term. Call a friend and speak to a friend every day. Call a family member that's close to you. Hug, legit, you hear this all the time. Hug someone. It doesn't have to be a stranger, because who knows what could happen, but hug someone once a day. If you could write down maybe 5 to 10 things that you could strive to try and do, and you're not going to get it done every day. If you do those things, it pulls you away from the phone. It pulls you away from the computer. It pulls you away from how fast driving, picking up kids at school, making dinner, you know, all the things that I did and all the stresses that I've had in my life as a single father. And that if you can get away from the busy life and slow down once a day, even for just a little bit, I think that's very important. Get away from the TV.
I love it. I love it. So you guys, if you want to reach out to Cary, I'm going to have all of his information in the description. And again, thank you so much for your time and all your wisdom. And I hope you'll come back on again. And everybody, thanks for listening, and get busy living sober. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.